I've said that to myself
Don't
so
question
many
it.
times.
Don't question it.
What are we not questioning?
Exactly.
James,
Yeah.
what have you been up to this week?
Painting miniatures and playing Star Trek Online.
Wow,
Nice.
what a freaking nerd.
I know.
Fucking nerd.
Right?
Why'd you start playing Star Trek Online, though? Like, out of everything.
Well, because your ass has been sitting in the living room watching nothing but Star Trek for like 4 fucking weeks.
I do
And
feel like
then-
every time I've come over here in the past like month, you've been watching, what is it, Voyager?
Y'all
Or-
have been fucking
Generation.
shaming me for never fucking watching Star Trek ever.
Not me.
and
Whoa, whoa,
so-
whoa, whoa, whoa.
I-
Whoa,
no,
hold
no,
up.
no.
Not me. Not me.
I'm not making fun of you. I'm just agreeing with the fact that you've been watching a shit ton of Star Trek. Mm-hmm. I don't even
He's
live
got a
here,
lot
and
to
I've
catch
noticed.
up on. You'd said you'd never seen TNG, right?
the majority of it I've never seen. I probably won't ever go back to watch the original, but
There's
I'm-
hundreds of episodes, and like you
8?
can start with,
There's 800 episodes.
and you can start with Next Generation. You're really not going to miss much from it, unless you want to be like a
Completionist.
Uber fan, something like that. Completionist, yeah. You're not really going to miss anything that they don't cover or touch on
Well,
in Next Generation.
Heck, honestly, in the original series, the first 2 seasons, if you have to watch complete seasons, are the only ones really worth it. The third season was just fucking weird. And even then, like, there's some stuff you could drop from the original.
Unpopular opinion. I don't like the original series.
I like a lot of it, just all of season 3 just did not do it for me, and some of the episodes in 1 and 2 were just kind of
Yeah.
like, maybe I had to be in the 60s to really get it. I
yeah.
don't know.
I'd never seen, well, I'd seen bits and pieces of Voyager, but like Deep Space Nine was like my jam when I was a kid. Every time that fucking show would come on, I'd sit down and watch like 12 episodes of it. But yeah, you were fucking watching Star Trek all out in the living room, and it got me on a Star Trek bender, and then I was like, oh, I wonder if Star Trek Online is any better, and then I started playing it, and it's actually pretty fun. I've gotten a little annoyed with it, but yeah, it's actually pretty fun. And then I'm sitting there watching Voyager, which I actually really like Voyager, unfortunately. But I binged the entire 7 seasons of Voyager over the last 2 weeks.
Voyager, the whole purpose of wasn't the purpose of Voyager to do something with the Borg, and then they
They're
ended up
just trying to get home, man.
Yeah.
But yeah,
They hit a
like,
weird wormhole, went
Yeah.
deep in deep space.
Yeah.
Now they're trying to get home.
I saw
That's the entire show.
I saw the first episode when it first came out, and that was about it.
I know my stepdad is really a huge Trekkie. I've never really watched Star Trek like religiously or anything, but I've seen enough of Voyager to kind of know the broad swaths of what the story's about in each season, for the most part at least. So that's about my extent of knowledge
if
with
you've
Star
ever
Trek.
seen, or if you've ever seen the Orville, there's like the little globular guy that's always hitting on the Doctor. Basically, his species steal Voyager to try to do some stuff with a planet on the, or that they caused a fucking catastrophe on, and they steal Voyager, and then they're like, "Yep, nope, I'm dying, I'm out, can't send you back, sorry." And then Borg happen, and a lot of other shit happens to him.
Bork, bork, bork.
Just lots of Borg.
It's basically like a Next Generation feel, but like with different people. It has some flaws. Some of the characters aren't as cool, aren't as funny. Some are just outright annoying. But if you can get past that, it's got some really good stuff.
And then they hit their second season lull, and they're like, well, how are we going to fix this? And they're like, oh, look, 7 of 9 is in a really tight outfit with her gigantic tits. That's how they solve it every time.
All right, time. How long was it?
Never fails.
Let's see, that was about, I don't know, just, was that like
It was 5
6
minutes.
minutes?
Actually, the person we should be asking is you. You literally can look at the time.
4 minutes and 24 seconds.
There you
Dear
go.
Lord.
Yeah.
420.
Hey.
So I will say, out of all of them, like TNG, I've kind of been annoyed with a little bit, because I'm now hitting it midway through 6th season, and there's really only one person I get super annoyed with out of everybody, and it's Riker. He is honestly probably the worst person on that show.
He's meant to be the confrontational, the I am the alpha male,
Okay,
and that is him. He's supposed to be like what Kirk was, but
He's Star Trek's Edward Cole.
yeah,
He is.
he's supposed to be the Kirk of the Next Generation, and then Picard is supposed to be like they're supposed to play off of each other.
And
basically.
for the most part they do, but like at the beginning of the series, season 1, season 2, he's new, he's fresh as a first officer. He just wants to fuck everything up, and I have a certain appreciation for that, but I also still hate him because he just conflicts with almost every single person.
There's a term for the first season going into the second season. It's called growing the beard. It's because
true.
Riker grows the beard, and suddenly the show is much better. It's not necessarily because he has the beard. It's because the writers and the actors were growing into their roles and they were getting things figured out.
Yeah.
But ever since that point, once he had the beard, that's when things were. There was a flow. There was a rhythm. Everyone was comfortable.
Yeah, and the end of season 2, season 3, season 4, Riker's pretty great. He still has his annoying moments, but at that point, I started to actually get annoyed with Guinan more than anything else because it was just like they just wrote in a character to fill time for the most part, and her whole role is just to be that barback that doesn't do anything. And then like they give her a throwaway moment here or there, and the end of the finale for season 5 is they have to go back in time to San Francisco to figure out why Data's head was in a mine shaft for some reason for 500 years, right? And I feel like they just threw Guinan in there. She had no purpose in that whole, like she had no driving force for the entire episode, in my opinion.
Yeah, some of those it's just like, well, we want to add some flavor, so let's throw in Whoopi Goldberg.
She's been around forever. That's how long she's been around. It's like, okay, cool, we get it.
For some odd reason, she's serving drinks on this fucking Star trip.
Well, I mean, I get it. I mean,
Dude, why not?
I get it, especially because she doesn't show up until 3rd season, I think it was. Because I mean, originally they had the bar, but they didn't have anybody at the bar.
She was in 3rd season? I really thought she had shown up before that.
Maybe she showed up 2nd season. She was not in the 1st season at all.
I know it was like well established, like before she showed up. Like there was like everything was set, and like all the characters were well established, and everybody knew who they were.
Well, there's also
most
a certain irony because at this point replicators are like you have everything. You can order anything. Why would you need a bartender?
Psychological.
Maybe,
Yeah,
but that's why they have a counselor, right?
And the same thing is like why they have cooks and things like that.
Right.
And it's all so they're like, oh well, actual beef tastes better when it's.
Well, keep in mind, it's a government agency, right? I mean, effectively, it's like a corporation. So yes, jobs had been automated away, but yet you still have that like momentum of a corporation or a government agency. So even though this person's been replaced,
Right.
you know, we'll keep them on the payroll.
Space magic, yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's only 7, maybe. I have to go look, but Amazon has up to season 7, so once I get done with that, I'll move back onto Deep Space Nine.
My favorite version of Riker though is Lower Decks Riker. I fucking love the Lower Decks. If you've not seen Lower Decks, it's hilarious. If you have Paramount Plus, you can watch those.
That's like the new animated one, right?
Yeah, it's just Star Trek Rick and Morty is all it is.
Yeah.
But
That's
it's so much better because like Riker shows up and he's just alpha jock asshole, and they just play it up, and it's so good. There's a lot of Trekkies out there that do not like Lower Decks. I love it, and mainly I love it because I like watching the world burn and fuck your feelings. Mm-hmm. And that show is real. Go fuck yourself, fuck your feelings. Because like in this last season, spoiler alert, there's an episode where their chief engineer is he's a prince from another planet, and his mother shows up regularly to try to get him to become king. Mm-hmm. And my favorite thing about it is everything in it is canon, right? Mm-hmm. So that's like where they first showed Riker's ship and all this other stuff, but everything in it's canon. So there's a planet that has dragons on it that was settled by a bunch of Ren Fair people, and he is their prince. And the way that he becomes king is by losing his virginity. And it is so great. Like, I just love that that's canon now. There's a fucking planet out there, and the
Like, have they
Federated-
actually like gone out of the way to explicitly say that that show is actually canon, or are they just fucking with people?
No,
The-
it's canon.
the-
Everything in
it
Star
falls
Trek.
under Star Trek.
Like it adheres to all
IP.
the rules of what makes it canon,
Yeah.
so it's technically canon.
And basically the only thing that makes anything canon in Star Trek is it's not a fan production, and it's aired on a national or a network TV.
Yep.
Or a
The-
network.
Syndicated
Paramount
network,
Plan-
yeah.
It
syndicated
falls
network.
under their IP, and it's official. It's canon.
Yep.
Like it's supposed to be just like the hokey or funny side of Star Trek, but like it technically is all things that have happened in the Star Trek universe now.
Yeah. But my all-time favorite moment is Q showing up in Deep Space Nine on the first season when Cisco's just like, "Dude, I'm not doing this," and he's like, "Well, you're no fun," and then he fucks off.
Cisco is seriously my favorite.
Cisco's good. I haven't even seen all of DS9, but I really like Cisco.
Cisco also has the same thing because he has a beard phase,
Yeah.
and once he hits beard phase, he hits
It's
like
like the third or fourth season.
yeah, he goes from annoyed captain of Starbase to bearded badass captain who's still annoyed at the same bullshit that keeps happening because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
They got to protect the wormhole. Great. The Cardassians show up to fuck up everything. Great. He blows up the Cardassians. They leave. Great.
Dominion
Just
shows
another
up.
just another day.
Quark fucks some shit up.
The
Then you
Dominion. I mean, it doesn't matter who it is that
Quark the
shows.
Ferengi?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
You know what's funny though?
Shit.
Quark and his brother, is it?
I don't know what is.
They show up multiple times in the original in TNG.
Oh yeah, there's
and-
crossover between them.
and they're-
Worf
but they're
is on
not-
Deep Space Nine for a lot of it.
Oh yeah, well I mean because he transfers as the security officer to there after Odo passes away.
Does his weird jelly thing.
Yeah, well, I mean he's always weird jelly thing.
You know what's really funny about Deep Space Nine, and I didn't realize this. I thought the lower decks was the first time that they had bridged it, but I forgot all about because I was a kid whenever I was watching Deep Space Nine, right? But so there's an episode in lower decks where she's trying to get rid of her daughter, get her off her fucking starship because she's a problem. The captain is, so they make her clean the biofilters out of the holodeck. and they breach it in there, right? However, I was like, God, that's what that would be used for. But they actually covered that subject in Deep Space Nine because Quark makes his
brother do it.
his brother clean the filters and
Yep.
It's
Yep.
like, oh, God.
I'm following it with exactly 0% of this, but through context, is it like asking someone to change their blinker fluid or something?
No.
No,
So
no.
so
They're-
like the
they're-
holodeck is a simulated.
Yeah,
But
I know
you
the
can
holodeck
but
is.
you can touch and feel everything.
Okay.
You can program anything you want.
and they have biofilters.
And the biofilters is for all the fluids and all that stuff that
It's basically the cleaner.
Caleb, you want to clean this condom?
Got it.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they actually cover that in Deep Space Nine. And I was like, son of a bitch. Okay.
People get bored, man.
Yeah.
Or people go, the survivors that come back from the last TNG mission, they discover new fetishes, and well, you can't help it.
Space is a lonely place.
Well, so one of those examples is in TNG where one of the engineers, he can't talk to anybody, but he has a holodeck addiction, so he'll go and he'll be Barclay, and he'll go and he'll spend all of his time in the holodeck on his off time. But all the people that he's simulating are all the people that he can't talk to. So Riker, Picard, and all them. And there's really one of Troy in there, Deanna Troy, and she's like a goddess that he'll sleep with on the regular. Yeah, that's real good. But all the command crew are the Three Musketeers.
My favorite is how Riker is like.
He's really
he's like 3 or 4
short.
feet
Yeah,
tall.
he's really short. It was pretty good.
It's good. Yeah, I remember that. I think you were watching that last time we were over here.
Yeah, that was like 3 seasons ago.
Jeez.
And he has like Barkley is a character that reoccurs throughout the show. That's just like one of those. He just has a fear of everything, and so one of them was like on the recent one, he had a fear of being transported because he understood what was happening and just couldn't get over it. He was literally being deconstructed, copied, pasted, reconstructed.
Yep.
But they're watching some sort of solar event where it's taking plasma fields and throwing it into a black hole, and a ship got stuck over there, so they have to go over and figure out what happened to everybody. So he's been told to go over there, so he goes over there like after trying to get over it, and then fucking something in the matter stream fucking bites him, and it's like partially constructed, partially deconstructed. Nobody wants to believe him, and so he thinks he's like getting psychosis, which is something that they talk about is transporter psychosis. You just start seeing shit that's not there, and you just see this gigantic worm thing just fucking bite him. It's like the size of a dog.
They get into a lot of transporter shenanigans in the Next Generation, like Thomas Riker.
Oh my god! Like the two things that fail in there the most are the transporters and the holodeck. The holodeck has malfunctioned more times in that show and caused more problems.
Oh, I'd have just ripped the son of a bitch out of my ship at that point.
Well, one of them
Off limits.
So-
all personnel.
Had just
No, I
secondary
just
shields or something.
Walk
like
in there
that.
with the
Yeah.
fucking sledgehammer and start breaking things and be like, "Do not fix that."
Well, one of them, they accidentally create sentient life by challenging the computer to create something that's smarter, that can outwit Data, because Data likes Sherlock Holmes so much. And they do, and Moriarty becomes self-aware. And so the Moriarty starts using the ship's computer to create a device that could destroy the ship from inside the holodeck. I'm like, wow, okay, it's not good, but yeah.
Did you guys ever read Red Shirts by John Scalzi?
I have not. I've not read any of the Star Trek books.
It's not Star Trek per se, but it's actually a really good book. I encourage you to read it. It's worth a few laughs.
What's it about?
We don't read.
It is the red shirt stereotype, you know. So these are the people that die early on to basically let you know that it's a serious issue that they're dealing with, and they are on a starship, much like in Star Trek, very much like in Star Trek, and effectively one of the antagonists starts to catch on to how their lives seem almost like, not necessarily a game, but almost like an episode. Certain things happen where for about I think it's like 43 or 47 minutes when they have an event, all of a sudden people take on certain personas that are a little bit uncharacteristic of their everyday lives, and they start doing things that are kind of out of character for them, again, for a certain amount of time. And it's one of the things that I thought was pretty interesting was inertial dampeners seem to not really work in that moment of time, because you can go faster than light, and then when you stop, you have inertial dampeners, and these things can actually, basically like the shock absorbers, right? But yeah, for that period of time when they're dealing with an event, those are all of a sudden not really working very well, which is why you have jostling and stuff.
Everything shakes.
Yeah.
And it gets very, very meta. And then once it starts to get meta, it gets more meta, and it's very interesting. It's a good book. It's got a lot of laughs, makes you think a little bit, but it's pretty fun.
That does sound pretty cool.
And it's Scalzi, so I don't know if you've read anything by Scalzi, but I mean his big books go like that. They're really, really quick reads.
That's one of my favorite things about her. One of my favorite bullshit technological excuses in Star Trek. They're going like faster. They're creating a warp bubble, right? They don't need inertial dampeners. It just goes away. But they're like, oh yeah, we've got these inertial dampeners that stop us from moving. But yet every time they get hit, they're like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like, then when you get into like on Memory Alpha and things like that, they can only the inertial dampeners can only dampen so much, and you're and you look at that and you're like, wow, he was going like warp 9, warp 10, like 1,000 times the speed of light. That would be way more than those inertial dampeners could. Yeah, it's not very well thought out.
They just
Technobabble.
hand wave a lot of stuff
Yeah,
with it.
lots
They
of
try to
hand
come with as best of a scientific explanation as they can sometimes, which I do appreciate.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of times it's just like, oh well, we developed technology to overcome those limitations, so we're good.
I mean, it's not like they have bombers in space in Star Trek.
Yeah, because like. What kind of things like
actually
you can't bomb
They
in
do,
space? Gravity
but-
doesn't pull things down in space. How does that
Yeah.
work? Like other poor movies.
Listen, as the guy who is currently role playing as what is supposed to be the tech nerd around people who I know for a fact, you too, for a fact, do exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in the role play for your day job.
No, I mean not necessarily actually.
You do, to an extent.
Supposed to be is the key word there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be.
Supposed to.
I'm actually a help
you-
desk lead now, so I just
You
tell
can't
other
think
people to
about
go
it
do
too
it.
hard. It's fun the less you think about it. You
Oh,
just
yeah.
hand
Yeah,
wave
yeah.
away and don't think about it,
There's
and it's fine.
There's
It's
a
true,
lot
but,
of
like, certain
suspension.
times it's just it's too much. I mean, like I used to be that kind of person that would get pissed off about how, Jack Bauer would say that's 80,000 volts of current. Well, volts is potential, not current. That would be amps. I'd get mad at like watching Scrubs, and they'd have their watches and metallic pens literally inside the MRI
room.
scan room. And it's like, if you've ever been inside an MRI scan room, not only are there, there's no metal, right? It's a goddamn magnet right there, right? You also find out that you can't hold a fucking conversation there because the magnets never turn off. It's loud inside an MRI scan room. Like, the only time it's off is during maintenance or emergencies. So it's always on. I used to get like really upset about that, but I mean, over time, you just kind of like, you suspend your disbelief,
Suspension
right?
of disbelief. Yeah.
But
It's called not
sometimes
being a
there's just
goddamn
too much.
grognard.
There's just too much, and it's like maybe for other people that's awesome, but sometimes it's just like, dude, I'm not willing to make that leap. I really want to be entertained, but at the same time, like I want it to be kind of immersive, And if you make me do that too much,
Yeah. That's where science fiction it's real difficult, but like science fantasy, it's a lot easier.
exactly.
Because I'm gonna bring it up. Don't sue us just for saying the name Warhammer. Warhammer 40K, the orcs. It's literally just space magic. All of their stuff works not because it's technologically
But
functioning.
They think it works.
They
It works.
think
I-
it works. So
I
it
want
doesn't.
to I want to break your heart right there. So
They changed that.
they changed it. So it is no longer through the power of mentality do that. They just make shit work.
That's so
stupid.
They did that for Psychic Awakening because they wanted to introduce the whoever they are as the most powerful psychers, but yet the orcs were the most powerful psychers up until that point because they just believed something would work.
they could alter
you're telling
reality
me
by
in the
thinking about it.
Warhammer universe, no longer do airplanes fly because people get scared and all at once they lift up on the handles.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Turns out.
It turns out.
Turns out space fungus is not the most powerful psychers.
That's unfortunate. That was one of my favorite things.
It was
about,
my favorite thing. I
Yeah.
was very upset about that too.
Actually,
What do
the
they have
big
as the most powerful
suits for the-
psychers
I
now,
have
technically?
no
Because I was
fucking
thinking it was
idea.
either Thousand Suns or
It's-
it was.
It's Warhammer. It's irrelevant.
I mean, you're not wrong. Well, one of the things that kind of annoys me because I'm starting to play a lot more. I'm painting more of those eventually. I haven't painted hardly anything.
I'm painting.
I did assemble.
Tomorrow,
I
I'm
did.
painting
I did
tomorrow.
assemble some recently, so I have 10 new warriors sitting on my desk in there. But out of all the groups, I'm surprised that the Tau has not gained access to the warp this whole time for nine editions.
Have the Tau been in there for 9 editions?
I don't know how long the Tau have been around technically, but they're not new. They've been around since 5th, right? At least. So
Is it by choice?
no, they're just like, oh, they don't have access to it. The Ethereals have psychic abilities, but they don't use them.
Well,
like I
they're
don't
also
know.
not the brightest people in the world. I mean, they believe space communism is the greater good.
But it works
was
for
gonna say
them.
it
I
works
mean,
for
I
them.
mean, here, story wise,
At least they didn't
out
create
of
a warp
out of
demon.
all the other Xenos in existence, like Tyranids. Tyranids is true space communism. It's one. You're either in or you're out. And when
No,
you're
it's-
in, you're now converted.
Yeah, they're the spaceport.
Right. Well, Necrons are Spaceborg,
I was
right?
gonna say. Yeah.
Necrons,
I think
but that's
Space Borg are pretty much Tyranids in one extreme.
Well, I
and
mean,
then-
the Tyranids
and then-
will assimilate your
they're
biomass.
both.
right.
I mean, wouldn't
The-
the Borg be the space Borg?
Yeah,
Because they're from
in
space.
Warhammer.
Spaceport.
I know, but
Space-
I'm just saying. Never mind.
Well, see,
But-
see, everything is from the humans' perspective. So
Whereas
these things
the-
come from space. We just went to
the
space.
Necrons are just like, oh, you're alive. Now you're not.
Yeah, the Necrons don't care. They're not
They
interested
don't,
in.
They don't assimilate anybody.
No, they don't. They just walk in, stomp over, and you never know if you're existing on a Necron world or not. Because they've been around for literally billions of years. They're literally the oldest race in Warhammer, but they get treated like garbage. They're just walking trash cans, except for all the named characters. They all actually have personalities. All the rest of the Necrons, no, they're just walking trash cans. They're just T600s just walking
that's-
around.
It's like that with any real, like, story or game or system or anything like that. The named people have plot armor, so they
Yeah.
get to do what they want.
like Elric.
So much plot armor.
I think the most annoying thing for me of Warhammer 40K is the new logo, like the new branding and stuff.
Yeah.
Like it irritates. Like the thing that I just can never unsee that irritates me absolutely the most for Warhammer 40K is Warhammer is 9 letters long. So if you wish to center it, you could center it on the 5th letter, right? Yet when you look at all the Warhammer stuff with the new logo, it's fucking shifted and not centered, and where you have the W inside the graphic and then the R at the end, like they colored outside the lines. And
like
that just irritates me for a brand, for IP like Warhammer that's been around, has a lot of
Money.
I should, big fan
They're
base.
like,
Like
why
you
would
couldn't
we-
fucking double check that. You couldn't put that through QA.
Why would we
You
why
know?
would we hire a professional to do it whenever
Well, I mean, they're a publicly traded company. I mean, I thought they had professionals there.
I will say that there was a very interesting thing that was released. They released a survey that was open to the public on what you liked about what the current edition was doing, what you didn't like, and they had an open comment section. And it's very interesting how many people are telling them to open 3D printing for tournaments and to start just publicizing STLs to let people print their models. And there was a very good breakdown, and I don't remember where I saw it, but there was a good breakdown on a YouTube channel that was talking about why opening up STLs would be so good for them. Because right now, the production of ABS, or PVC plastics, which is what they're kind of doing with their mainstay models, normal people don't have access to that. So they could continue paying the same kind of outrageous scale pricing for, 10 models for $50, and that's just for infantry, or like $100 for one model. I mean, again,
Yeah.
not practical. But on the flip side, FDM printers aren't going to look as nice, no matter what kind of printer you get on the market. And resin is resin.
Mhm.
It is more fragile. Do they really lose in this aspect? Because if they break, and a lot of people were talking about the same thing that you and I have talked about, where unless they do some sort of eco printing where the value of the model degrades effectively, giving you so many prints, it says like this STL is only good for 10 prints. Well, it's like, how do you? We don't have the thing in place to make that worth doing.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, you don't. I mean,
It's just not a practical
that's,
solution.
Yeah, that's like something like, oh, I'm going to download this model that also has a virus that will delete it, and who knows what could go fucking wrong, because nothing could ever go wrong there.
So the idea here is that you sell model poses just like you would. You'd sell the same pack of 10, except you do 10 STLs in different poses, or do 5 STLs in different poses. Don't matter. You can sell it for half the price. Let's say $25 for 5 models. That's $5 a print, or $5 a model with different poses for a single infantry. You still do, you're still getting your money from that. But the same thing happens. Like you can, I mean, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of copied models all over the place. There's also scans of all these original, and they're going to chase them down anyway. I mean, that's what Warhammer's been doing actively anyway. They're going out and they're shutting down everything that looks exactly like their stuff. But they can't legally shut down all the proxies and all the stuff that somebody else has designed.
Especially if they're giving it away.
Especially if they're giving it away. So I'm curious to see what GW's actually to do with it, because economically it would be better for them to start selling STLs. Because
it's free money.
Well,
they don't lose, but they're not spending any money on production for that, other than the effort it took to make those, which they probably already have something like that they could convert over.
The problem with it is, if you open up tournaments to it, right?
Sure.
Like official tournaments, it is unsustainable.
It's unsustainable now. When you look at how it is today, GW tournaments are on the decline, specifically because they banned 3D printing. Okay, cool. To what extent did they ban 3D printing? You can't even kit bash anymore for 3D for models. So anything that has an alternate head or an alternate piece of armor, a different shoulder pad, those are now not tournament legal. Now they've killed the base. Mm-hmm. That's why it's on decline, because local shops had been doing tournaments, but then you get people who aren't printing to a certain standard. All they have to do, and they would make more money ultimately, because their market, they could still continue selling models the way they are. They're opening up a new section of market for people who do that, because not everybody is going and buying a 3D printer, and not everybody is going to turn around and develop the skills to maintain and learn how to slice and print and cut and do all these creative things. Not everybody's doing that.
The problem with it is unsustainable. It is an unsustainable business model. And if you look at, like, I don't know what GW's profit margins are, where they make their most money. But here's the thing. If I go, okay, here's all of my models. You can buy each of these models for $5 or whatever, and you buy those models, right? And then you 3D print those models, and I go, hey, I would like another one of those armies. Could you print me off one? And then you go, yeah, sure, I'll print you off one. Mm-hmm. They just lost out on money. Caleb does it. Mm-hmm. You do it. You do it. They lose out on all of that money because the model doesn't expire. It's out there. Mm-hmm. And they would have to actively, which is what they do already, but actively shut down those models being shared. But at the same time, they're going to sell one set of models for like meta. Mm-hmm. And then that impacts meta, because you see where I'm going with this?
Sure. But they are to combat that, which they already do this, is exclusives. Here's the thing. People love variety for the reason that they do. If they sell shop exclusives, which they already fucking do.
They could do exclusives. They could do it where the models that they release
they
are just
have
like the
to
most
change
basic
their
stuff.
current model. Again, there was a conference that I went to recently that basically said, if you don't disrupt yourself, somebody else is going to do it. Mm-hmm. Now, GW's been around a long time at this point, right? I mean, but their model hasn't changed.
No, but
so again, if they don't grow into that, people are going to 3D print anyway.
But like we were talking about the other day, if you're not making money on books, like if that's not your major source of income, and you open up 3D modeling or open up 3D models, you are going to go out of business. That is wholesale what's going to happen.
They
You
do
can-
make books.
I know.
I mean, a lot of
They
them.
make money off of books, but that's probably not where they make their most money.
Yeah, I think James is making the assumption, and I don't know if you're right or wrong, but James is making the assumption that they do make books, yes, but it's the models that they make the majority of their money off
Sure.
of.
But if you don't adjust your model,
Oh, I agree with you.
no pun intended.
No, I agree
But
with you.
how do you make it profitable? How do you keep you from printing models for literally everybody?
That's never stopped anybody so far today, currently,
so-
as it
It
stands.
stops people when you have tournaments in place and you can't use those in tournaments, right?
I think, with respect, I think it's adapting, right? It's adapting to what is going on around you, right? So 3D printing is a thing, right? So if 3D printing is a thing, and I understand what you're saying, you know, let's just go ahead and open it up. We'll make these official STLs, and then you purchase our STLs for how much? But that gives him the ability to print all of us armies, right?
Right.
Well, then perhaps you adjust your business model so that you're not reliant upon the sales of models or STLs. So you have to transition. You have to pivot to something
Right.
else as your primary revenue
And
streams.
I understand that. Like
But-
D&D is, they do not make money off of models. If you are a DM and you're using models in your game and you're not 3D printing those models and painting them, what the fuck are you doing? Dungeons and Dragons makes their money off of their books, wholesale. But the thing is, and they haven't even tried to make. They're just out there and they're like, yeah, this dude modeled an owlbear, cool. I'm not going to go after him. That's what most of those people that go off on rants and things on YouTube and stuff about that. That's what they're wanting. They're wanting Games Workshop to just give them free shit.
I mean, that's cool. I understand what they're saying, but I feel like we've kind of jumped the shark on this. Again, I'm not saying they stop what they're doing today, but if they don't change their model, they're going to keep being the same thing,
Right.
and they're going to keep losing business because they have lost money.
They'll become
at
the
this point.
Kodak of the gaming
That's
world.
exactly what the point is. They
And-
haven't changed anything. And here's the thing: is that if they take the money that they spend shipping models and stuff to stores and like that, and they still put exclusives in stores, because again, them not putting out a $160 model, no, they're probably gonna still do that. But now they can create STLs and put them additionally on their site for half the price, and they have lost nothing because they haven't had to produce anything. There's nothing into the plastic. There's nothing into the modeling that they aren't already doing.
They're selling just data. Now
They're just
now
selling
here's
the data.
The offset there is, at what point does the money you save on overhead, like the plastic and production and shipping and handling and all that, and like distribution, at what point does the amount of money you save on that overhead become not worth it because that one sale you made is shared with so many people that you begin to lose money?
So
and
That's
the
what
question,
I think
'cause
that's what James is trying to say.
with
you make
the-
an initial
right,
sale,
right.
but you lose future sales.
Yes,
That's where
correct.
James is talking
with
about.
the
But
rise
that's the
of
thing, I don't know.
NFTs, that is the solution if they do it properly. And again,
But
I
at the
haven't
same
been able to get to
time,
that point yet, but yeah.
You're still considering, like, there is no transition, there's no pivot to other revenue sources.
The problem is
they
like
just
right
need
now,
to find other
yeah.
revenue sources and capitalize on those, so that when this happens, that does not happen.
Right. The other point is that they do make a shit ton of money off of books. Like the base Warhammer book, you can't just go and straight
$80
build.
now, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't go
I got in
and
at
build
fifth
an
edition,
army
it's 50.
off of the base book. You can't. You have to go buy a codex for your army. You know how
Those
how
are
often?
like $40 now, aren't
Yeah,
they?
and every codex, and this is the thing that the Warhammer community is annoyed about, is that they release the codex and then 2 weeks later they release an errata for it already.
Okay,
And it's like, okay, well, what was the point, right? And so
that's true. They might. However, if you have an army, let's say you spend $300 on books. How much did you spend on models?
you spent a shit ton more.
Right.
But also,
so they're
I want to
cutting
point out
75% of their profit right there. And
But
the other thing
but
is,
who's gonna? Okay, I want a serious question though, because you've mentioned I can just print armies for all my friends. You know as well as I do how long it takes us to just print certain things.
right?
How long it takes to print terrain. This is not a small investment. I mean, it would literally take weeks of just commutative time to print somebody even just
if you're playing
infantry.
Kill Team,
If you're
You're
playing
okay.
Kill Team, but like again, and Kill Teams is supposed to be a small game, right?
Well, and-
That's the whole reason I started playing was because James had got me to Kill Team, and we had never played a single game.
when you want to throw down
So-
1,500
Here,
points.
but here's where I pivot on that, right? I printed BattleTech models forever. However, I stopped printing BattleTech models. You know why? Because it's no longer worth it for me to go through the fucking hassle setting them up and doing all that. Not when I can buy a 5-pack for $15
Sure.
and have it here next week and not even have to deal with it, and they look nice, right? So my biggest problem with Warhammer right now is the fact that their models cost so much because they don't have to. And I know for a fact, because they put out a video on it, all of their modeling is done in-house. All of their milling is done in-house. All of their plastic injection molding is done in-house. They've probably put $10 million into just putting it in-house. How much do you think one of those packs cost them to make? It's dollars.
well, yeah.
And they charge 50 for them, right?
Which is exactly
Right.
why I say they aren't going to lose money on the STL market.
Well-
Like, because they can turn around, they can remodel a lot of that stuff, and just release variations. Because for instance, like Tau, Tau's last variation was changed in 8th. So 8th edition is when we got the white Tau model boxes.
Oh, okay.
Right,
yeah,
and then previously we had the brown Tau model boxes, which went back to 6th or 5th.
I would say 5th, I think.
So I think it's every other version, right? So Necrons, we got new Necron models with 8th and 9th. The prior Necron models, and there's only been a couple variations. When we moved to that kind of model, the one I've been referencing, you can now create hundreds of variations, and you can individually price them. If you want this particular model, hey, this model's $9. Print to your heart's content. They're also going to break more, which means more money for 3D printing. I think it's more sustainable than everybody has realized, but I guarantee you it's up to them to make that kind of move. And it'll be interesting because
Right.
other wargaming companies are moving to that model. There are people going to be still printing BattleTech because supply issues. I mean, we
Yeah.
can't
Correct.
get a
Right.
hold of fucking BattleTech models right now from CGL. I mean, it's fucking almost worthless. I went to Amazon to look for that Annihilator pack, by the way, the one that has the Annihilator in it. $80.
Well, yeah, that's just scalping, though.
It is, but see, how do you combat scalping when you can't get a hold of stuff? We can get a hold of stuff for Warhammer, right? But we're still paying $80. So what's
Well,
the change,
and-
right?
Though I will say that Catalyst is starting to sell on their website, and I have not seen that gone out of stock yet.
Yeah, but I've also seen how Catalyst ships, and it takes like 8
Right.
weeks to get something out. My Battle of Tokyo stuff took 8 weeks to get here.
Yeah.
So
Do they do it in batching or something? Do they wait till they have so many
I'm
orders
assuming
before
so.
they ship?
CGL is not the big company they've kind of made themselves to appear.
I think
They're not that
Randall
big.
Bills in 2016 or 18 like made it explicitly clear like they're not that big
No,
of a
they're not.
company at
No.
all.
No.
And I can tell you just from working with them, I mean, a lot of those people are just contractors.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we've talked about how they're planning on bringing all the printing stuff in house into the
Yeah.
U.S. But
Yeah.
when to set up an operation like that
Well,
isn't like an overnight thing. It's
They've
gonna be.
got a pretty big backlog of stuff. They really do.
There's
So,
still
I mean,
there's still people who haven't gotten their second wave, and they're now
Shit, I
they're
just-
now calling for a
I
third
got
wave
mine
that
on
they're
the
going to do.
23rd.
Did you finally get yours?
I got all my stuff on the 23rd of October.
So that's what I'm saying is like they're going to get through fulfilling these, and I guarantee you we're going to see another Kickstarter for something because they can't
Well, that's
produce
their model. It seems
they can't
It
produce
seems.
stuff quick enough and able to maintain a stacked market. Game of Armored Combat boxes, they're hard to find now. The invasion boxes, near impossible. Again, looking on Amazon, they're like
Right.
they're selling for twice as much. So I guarantee you, if CGL turned around and released official STLs, people would buy the shit out of them.
Right.
So
The other problem that I'm gonna throw out here is it would require a change in patent law in the United States, because in patent law in the United States, I have this model, right?
Mhm.
This is my model. I made it. in order for you to make one and sell it on something like Game Body, this is the big, and this is a very big problem for Catalyst right now. Game Body, right? If you look at on Game Body site, they cannot take those models down. They make these big like Gundam style piece it together models, and they're not licensed by anybody. And the reason why they can't take those down is because they changed them greater than 17%.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they're going to have to change some laws. Because if I take this model and I just go, okay, well, I'm just going to pose it just a little bit different in Tinkercad and sell it, you just taking money away from that company.
Well, so to note, changing a position doesn't count anything towards the percentage. You actually have to change a physical aspect of the model in percentage for that. So just FYI.
not necessarily. You can pull it apart in pieces. That's where Game Body got away with it. They just pulled it apart in pieces. It's legal.
There's got to be design. There's got to be something with that because
It's probably some kind of loophole.
Part
somewhere
of that.
hasn't been fixed yet.
Look at as a perfect stage for that as precedence. Look at the Harmony Gold fight that they just had.
Mm-hmm.
The fucking models that they used in Robotech are the same exact models that they used in early day BattleTech.
Well,
and they went through that whole fucking
there's
fight.
a lot more to that than just
Sure, but it's certainly an aspect that was an example of it, and that was one of their primary arguments.
I will say, U.S. copyright law is held together with duct tape and pure determination. Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
If you can bullshit your way into an argument, you can probably pass it if you have a good enough lawyer.
Right. But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
though, is
yeah.
You open yourself up. How do you make money on this? That's what we need to figure out.
Yeah.
That's what they have to figure out.
So, interesting thing. So, when you think about WinRAR for a second, right? Like WinRAR, I don't think anybody actually uses WinRAR anymore. It's not as popular as it used. It's not as useful as it used to be. But like everybody knows WinRAR was really well known for like you could use it for the trial period and then absolutely nothing happened because they're not going to go after the little guy. What they'll do is they'll make their money off of like big corporations who they can easily sue if they don't pay for their software, that sort of thing. So they make their money off of corporations, that sort of thing. So
because it's going to cost more money going after every little person who can't use
exactly,
it.
Yeah. You're going to lose money doing that,
it's the shareware concept, right?
Yeah,
So as an example, at that point in time, WinRAR purpose was for zip files because Windows did not have all the way up till Windows 10. They didn't have a built-in zipping
Archival
program.
and
And so now Windows 10 has that built in, then they're obsolete.
Right.
So the problem with distributing STLs is like you don't have that same kind of concept where you can go after big targets and cover your losses because everybody who buys an STL is going to be like an individual person uses it for their personal profit.
It's going to be the end user, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So think of something like Origin, Steam, GOG to an extent, I guess. Or like I've dabbled in music production stuff and that sort of thing. Usually if you buy like a plugin or anything like that in the music world, they'll make you download their own proprietary software to handle what you have is not actually like an STL file, but like a license to use those. And then they lock it behind a shit ton of DRM to make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to crack, so to speak. Like basically what Steam does.
That is actually something that they could probably end up doing.
Exactly,
and that makes me think of like, I mean, it's going to be shitty for some in some aspects, but it could be good in others. In the future, 3D printers, if the technology as far as like controlling them becomes a little bit more uniform, or at least uniform enough, they could have basically a controller or something like that where you have all your files through that platform like Steam or GOG or whatever like that. All your files are there and you can access them through that, but you don't actually own them. You just have licenses to access them through that. So
Like
that's actually not a bad idea. I'm sorry. That's actually kind of cool. The idea that you have something like a UI that you download, right? You install it and then you get your files. You order your files let's use Catalyst for example. You order your files from CGI. The only way that you can actually access them to do anything meaningful with them is if you incorporate them through this UI, of which they have some kind of back end deal with, say for example, like Liche, right? And inside the UI, you get a specific file format, right, that is their own, encoded in their own way, something minor or whatnot, and you don't actually get an STL file that you can then share. You get a different type of file that can only be read by, I don't know, maybe certain printers or something like that, but effectively, you basically lock the file format, and you can only do these things through here.
Well, and to combat that, to note, people are innovative.
Yeah.
So right.
Yeah.
So like,
But how many people are innovative?
I mean, and that's the point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
And
as
that's where you get into,
as
like,
example,
with video games, that's where DRM is. That's what that's for. And people create cracks. People create
Right. I mean,
different
there's
things around them.
you're gonna
put this. If it's the blocker between them having to pay for something and them getting something for free, people are very creative.
Oh yeah, well, and so I see where you're going. The problem is that you're looking at a company that's not a technology company,
Right.
to ask them to create a printer and a piece of software that's exclusive to them.
yeah.
And that would take just as much money for them spending on milling and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's where again I think they have to innovate in a different way to create a solution that A, works for them, but B, maybe it's not profitable now, but once they get away from milling as much, because the milling, those molds, they have a limited lifetime, right? And so they eventually reduce the amount that they're printing, and those things that were plentiful become a little bit more scarce. They're more exclusive to stores. They don't sell them to just anybody. They only send certain models to GW stores, just like what they do today, because there's anniversary models and all that stuff, and that just becomes more. Again, the amount of people that 3D print stuff and have access to it versus the people that aren't.
Well, you also have to think about the technology. This is like, even though it's been around for a while, home use 3D printing
It's the Wild West.
it's the Wild West. It's fairly new, but as time goes on, the technology is going to evolve. I kind of picture it might not be exactly 3D printing, but something like it. The next iteration of it is probably going to be something that everyone would have access to.
Here's the thing though, like with 3D printing and STLs and sharing files and that sort of thing, we're in the early to mid 2000s all over again. Like I know I talked about
It's
like a UI,
it's what LimeWire,
like LimeWire and
Yeah,
the
it's
like
where
the
we're at.
DMCA Act and whatever. And I know I talked it was my own, like me and you were talking about this and kind of brought it up, like a UI like Steam that kind of manages licenses and not proper STL files.
Yes.
But then the more I thought about that, the more I thought that'd be a fucking nightmare. Because does anybody remember the MP3 wars of the early 2000s, where every
God,
goddamn
yeah.
company had their own proproprietary version of an MP3? It was a
Yes.
nightmare. What would be interesting?
Poor Zoom.
Yeah.
So it's funny. It's funny that you brought it up because
I actually had a friend of mine that graduated from Harvard and got a job working for Microsoft on the Zoom.
Oh,
The Zune? Are you saying Zune? The Zune?
Yeah,
MP3
the
player?
Zoom. Yeah. Well,
one of
one
those.
of the funny things is they were talking about this lost interview of Steve Jobs, which is now available on Amazon. But one of the things they were talking about was like, okay, the iPhone, when it came out, was not a good device. The iPhone 3 was not a good device because they had an issue with the antenna. So they were garbage devices, but why were they still so popular? Because the user interface was easy. It was software was easy. The hardware was, hardware was actually
simple.
decent, but the hardware was, they called it antenna gate for a while there because they couldn't. The real kicker, they still made a shit ton of money, but the real kicker didn't happen until the iPhone 4S, whenever they improved their antenna technology and figured out
Fall damage.
how to do it, and it just kept going up from there. So it's very interesting to mention that because the Zune had similar or even better specs than the iPod at the time. Why did it fail?
Well, because it's a land grab. They weren't there first.
They didn't have the provenance
Microsoft,
that-
and that's the funny part,
yeah.
is they've always noted throughout time that Microsoft has never been first. That's just not the way they work. They take whatever innovation that just showed up and they improve upon it and then mass produce it, which has worked for them for the most part. But why didn't the Zune last? It was because the interface wasn't as pleasant to use or simple, and the support wasn't there. Apple support might be garbage now, but at the time it wasn't. Right? So
They used to be better.
I mean, iTunes is still one of the most successful music platforms. Why? Because the simplicity of the program.
Because people are stupid and fall for marketing. That's what it is.
I mean,
Poor,
yeah.
poor Ron Perlman.
Again, iTunes now.
Wait, hold up.
Oh,
I want to hear this. Go
okay.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want me to talk about it, or you want to talk about it?
Just look it up.
Yeah.
Just look it up because that's getting.
It's a long
The-
story.
The TLDR is Ron Perlman transferred devices, and iTunes locked out all of his stuff.
Music that he owned. Like he owned that
He
music.
he
on
ported
his
it
device.
into his iTunes, and he was locked out of it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like years, like a decade worth of stuff.
Oh,
And
that
that's actually an
sucks.
issue you'll actually see more of coming up, because if you're not leasing the music and you've uploaded it, certain platforms have the ability to lock you out of it unless you do what they ask. They hold at ransom. But anyway, yeah. So
Aren't
I
we all
honestly,
being held at ransom right now anyway?
their solution is probably similar to that, because again, you mentioned DMCA, and this STLs actually do fall under the Digital Media Content
yeah,
Act.
for
So
sure.
so the fact if they create if a large company like GW creates a version of Lychee or a program to cut and everything into there, but it has an NFT in it built in to say, hey, you can't load this into another program because it
Right.
forces it not to recognize, then they can at least control where it's printed,
Right.
where it's sliced, and then you still have to deliver it into a format that's going to be readable by other printers. I don't think they'll ever be able to stop that. So as an example, there are ways to take music from iTunes, convert it. That's a problem that they're always going to have.
Yeah. Piracy is one of those things that people always look at and they're like, oh, there's always going to be a way to get around it. That is true. How many people actually pirate? How many people with music that was in movies? It's a big thing because it's like a one time and you're done. Like you don't really. There are some movies and music is something that you listen to a lot, but like. It's one of those things where I'll go ahead and say it's the normie media, basically. It's a lot of things where people are constantly going back and getting the new stuff, watching new stuff, listening to new music. But piracy in general, there's really not a lot of people who are pirating the material. When it comes to other things like video games, other sources of media, other files and things like that, piracy is such a small number. I'm emphasizing with fingertips. That's what I'm doing.
No. I was actually looking at.
He was doing his Elton
inside
John
there.
impression.
Proceed.
But as far as sorry, as far as piracy goes, it really doesn't affect much as far as the end profits of companies. You see, like it's something like not even 1% as far as profits lost. When people aren't even going to buy it in the first place.
I
that's one of those
guarantee you
things.
they have a model of that already built in. Like GW specifically already has a piracy model of loss considered into their budgetary
Their
whenever they.
revenue and
Again, one of the things that they can innovate in is modularity.
Yeah.
I mean, again, when you're talking about it, people already do this for free sites where somebody's taking time, but I guarantee you they have sites. It's one of the sites that I found that's like Thingiverse and all those. I think it's Colts.
Colts 30.
People print Warhammer stuff on Colts because somebody went and created a body swap kit or a head swap kit or a weapon swap kit. That's what GW needs to do.
Right.
Because something that's thoroughly annoyed me, and it's a model that has now proven to fail, is Forge World. Forge World is their high-end, high model, but it fails. Why does it fail? They're using the same plastics. They're exclusive. It's an exclusivity model that's been price ranged out of somebody's budget. We're talking about $1,000 models.
Yeah.
No, and who's buying them? People are buying the big build it yourself Titan because it's cool, but it's also like $2,000 to build like and it's something that you will never field on a table.
No.
And so if
a
they
collector
if they
piece.
take that modeling system, they take Forge World and they recraft it into this modularity system that has they got 12 armies. You take some of that and you modularize it and you say, hey, you can pose this any way you want. Here's a pack of arms and weapons for $20. You have 20 different variations. It's stuff that they're already doing. All they've done is cut the arm off and repackaged it into their own web blister pack, so to speak.
That's effectively what Brent Evans and Blaine Pardoe
Yeah,
have done.
they're using a
They're attempting that.
yeah, they're using a tabletop injection molding machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 3D printed molds. What I will say is you will not see GW go to 3D printed models until their profit losses or until they can make it more profitable than their models. And I think I know what video you watched, and what I will tell you is what he didn't take into consideration is all of that equipment that he listed is already paid for.
Oh yeah,
So their actual overhead on a, let's say, a $60 box of models is about $3.
oh sure, yeah.
So until that overhead,
after investments though, I mean, and that's the thing is you have to consider.
no, it's about $3.
Oh no. What I'm saying is that when you consider your total model for the year, I mean, you're still having to, and here's the thing is that models get stale. That's the point I was making earlier, is that Necrons have only had 3 variations, Tyranids, and all these models that have existed for nine roughly editions have only had 2 to 3 iterations of models. Pretty stagnant. People are cutting up and posing them themselves because they're creative as fuck, and there's a lot of. But at any point in time, GW could say that's not a legal model anymore, and it fucks over
Right.
the
Yeah.
GW model because nobody wants to go play at GW tournaments now.
That's a good idea.
right?
Yeah.
So if and again, they're not. I'm not saying they have to stop what they're doing
Right.
now, but if they start adding this creativity, and even for the models that and that's where you get modularity, right? Even for the models that they're putting in stores today, you add a new head pack, and all of a sudden you've changed the game. And that head pack
Right.
costs you $15, and they'll still look good because resin prints at that level look just as quality.
Right, and that's where you start to really make your money is like, okay, here's our base models. Come to the store to buy these.
Yep.
Here are all of the shoulder options that you can print yourself.
For every single
you
Space
can-
Marine chapter ever.
And you can magnetize them and switch Space Marine chapters on a whim.
Here's the thing. They've
Right.
already put the holes for the magnets. You go buy this certain magnet size that we happen
Yeah.
to put in our stores. You
Exactly.
know, that's what I'm saying, is that I'm not saying like 3D printing's going to roam free forever.
It's not going to take over everything.
It hasn't, and that's the thing, is that you look at it today, people are 3D printing no matter what. People are getting creative and putting their own flair on models, they call them fucking space communist starfish on certain fucking sites. And there are some of the coolest models you ever seen. But if you look at that model, I couldn't tell you what it was representing, right? You have to designate it on your own. People are still going to do that no matter what.
Right.
It doesn't change it. It doesn't change that the people aren't playing in GW stuff. How does GW get people who are doing that into their tournaments without ostracizing them?
Right.
You do this modularity and you solved a unique problem. It doesn't have to be the full thing, and they can then still do exclusives. There are people who are still printing that Titan, by the way, like, because they don't want to go to Forge World. But you know how much they spend materials to do it? Way more than they would have paid for Forge World. But then they get to make it their own unique spin. At that point, did it elevate Forge World? No, nobody's going. There's not a whole lot of people who's going out and printing that Titan. Will I probably go and print some Supremacy suits at some point? I probably will, because I don't want to pay for Forge World prices. Because again, one of the suits is $1,000. Yeah, I don't want to do that. But it's gonna take me time to print it, and I'm gonna break stuff, and it's gonna fuck up. And is it gonna look as good? Who knows at this point, right? But
Sorry, I've been itching to get in. Sorry, I
Yeah,
just
no,
wanted
no,
to
yeah.
let you finish. I am going to piggyback off of what you're saying though, because like the modularity thing is actually pretty goddamn genius. Actually, like the more I think about it, because the best way to solve a problem is to make a problem yourself and then fix it, right? So like if you market the idea to people that you can have the models, like you buy a model in store, like you were saying, and then buy an STL in order to further customize and kit bash it yourself at home. I think that also, look, this is just what makes sense to me, but in my own head, that also makes it less likely for someone to like ask their Joe Schmo friend to print off like, hey, can you print off this exactly specific shoulder piece that I want? Like, no, you're just going to, assuming that you have a 3D printer yourself, you're probably just going to get it yourself instead of going through like the pain in the ass of
Right.
Or
having
some
someone else do
people,
it for you.
and
or
It's
some
not-
people will
so-
just buy it.
So
exactly.
Here's
And
okay. Keep going.
Sorry, no. And you were talking about like, magnetize them with these magnets we just so happen to have in our store. They could do like, what is the possibility that there will come a day when 3D printing becomes ubiquitous enough that there's going to be a boom in the amount of people that buy them? Shout out to my friend Sonny, who I work with, who like we've been talking about just 3D printing and modeling and that sort of thing. And anyway,
Look up.
but he was
No? Okay.
okay. But he's been talking to me like he's made like D&D and like World War II dioramas and stuff
Yeah.
for decades, and he said the number one reason that he has not bit the bullet on 3D printing yet is because of the cost of a printer. But they keep getting cheaper and easier to access, and eventually it's going to hit this point where there's going to be a massive boom in popularity, and when that happens, wouldn't it be genius for a company to sell their own proprietary resin or filament?
Yep.
So that they, if you can't beat them, join them,
They just came out with a model printer for $99. A resin model printer for $99. It's small.
Shoot.
You can only do one model at a time, but it costs $99. Now, this is where I'm going to say we're probably going to have to end it here in just a minute, but I wanted to get this point in. I'm looking at you, Catalyst. 3D printing is how you make a small company very, very big. Now, Catalyst, what they could have done, they had a
Print a
very
bigger building.
very successful Kickstarter, right? That upset a lot of people because models didn't get delivered. However, what Catalyst could have done was say, we're going to make all these models and let you 3D print them, right? And then everybody with a 3D printer would have jumped in on that. I don't know how much it cost them to have all of those models modeled. I don't. However, if they would have just modeled all the models and sent the STL files out to the people that backed the Kickstarter and just aggressively went after people that were sharing those models, they would have walked away with, I'm going to say, probably close to $2 million in the bank
Let's say so
that they could have
yeah.
used to do something else.
As an example, and this is something that could be very easy for them. Again, modularity is
Right.
massive, right? They have thousands of variants across the board, and
Yeah.
that doesn't even mean like we might not even see we might see new mechs in the Ilclan era, right?
We already have, and they don't have models, and it annoys my shit.
Right.
I mean, they only have how many Ilclan era models do they actually have
There's
besides the Devastator?
There's the Inferno, there's the Crucible, or the
No. I mean, like how many does Iron Wind's medals have?
none.
It's just the Devastator, as far as I know.
Yeah, just the Devastator.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
there's
Is if you
some
do
that
if you do $2-3 a model of a variant,
Yeah.
all of a sudden now, and you don't, and at that point, it's not even worth somebody going and copying it and putting it for free
No,
because
it's
they
not.
could. It's accessible and it's
It
cheap.
is not. Yeah.
And that's that's really the point of
See,
what I get at.
yeah.
Is if you lean into it, make it your own, it will be successful.
Yep.
You just have to disrupt it. So
That's
You have
what
to
I was.
also have your business set for it. That's the big
well,
thing.
and
is your
it takes
business has to
time
be-
and it takes risks. And honestly, to be quite honest, if CGL did this right, like let's say they managed to have their shit together and do it tomorrow, they released a website that had 3,000 variants of the roughly the same models, like a Hunchback, but they had the 4P, and they have the little details of those lasers for $5. It's almost the same price as the actual physical model. But then the people who have access to it print it. And I'll tell you right now, the resin's good. Even the ABS resin, which we've played with
Well,
already, is
yeah.
more fragile than the PVC, but you still get the high detail and whatnot. You're going to get people who have low TDO models, but
Yeah.
they could just as easily turn around and buy the $25 blister pack, or
That
they could spend the
modularity thing's really exciting me. You guys have been talking about this.
Right.
I mean, the idea, because I mean, it's not just limited to arms, missile boxes, or legs and poses. You also got to think about like center torsos and stuff, because you have models like the Wolfhound that has 3 lasers, but there's also a variant that has, I think, 2. You know, like that kind of stuff is cool. Where are the rear facing lasers on the Arc 2R? You know, and what if I don't want them, or on a later variant where the lasers are actually pointing forward? You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's just so
you
exciting me. Like CGL really needs to get on.
Well,
this
and
because
you
want
could
them.
you could sell them posed, you could sell them non-posed, you could sell them to where you could pose them yourself, and the way you make it super profitable is you go, okay, I want Battle Master. Okay, well here's your Battle Master. Okay, well I wanted the one with 6 lasers. Like, well, that's going to be another $5 because here's this model.
Yeah.
We're not just going to sell you the torso.
Right.
Think of like Hero Forge.
Yeah.
Right? Like if Catalyst
exactly.
if Catalyst made like a program or even like an interactive part of their website where it's I want to print a catapult. Okay, do you want the K2, the C4, the C3,
and you visually
H2?
see the GUI
No,
where
actually
it's
I
swapping
don't,
it.
because what I want is the one that has 2 LRM-10s with Artemis 4 that I made.
See,
you know.
Yeah, no. Here's that.
Step-
That's my
baby
point.
steps, Cal.
Here's where I would have taken it. Right, if I were Catalyst in the 3D printing world, and if I would have
See what I've started?
if I would have done a
Freaking
Kickstarter,
genius, I'm not gonna lie.
right? Here's what I would have
You just
done.
gotta let me get there.
I would have been like, we're gonna make these models, okay, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to Hero Forge, the people that made Hero Forge, or even PGI that works really well with us. You know, we're gonna go to them and we're gonna like, hey, could you make me a program that does this? And what this is if you go on to like Mech Forge or the Mech Hanger deal, right? And you build out your own mech. All of a sudden they're like, here's that record sheet for the mech, and here's a model that you can buy of your mech,
Here's the Alpha Strike card.
and here's the Alpha Strike card too. And then you're like, wait, you're gonna tell me that I can have my model on the table not as a proxy for $5
Or more. Well, so look at like if you
Yeah,
look
did you custom pose it? Is
if
it a
you did all that,
variant?
You
and you
do-
could choose your materials.
Yeah, you do the same thing that Hero Forge does just for mechs, and you just have it to where you can go in and customize your own mech, and it'll put the LRMs on there that you wanted and where they go. Dude, now you're talking about a lot of fucking money.
Yeah.
At that point, because like the issue we were talking about is like if you just put an STL file out there, so you're just asking for someone to just put it on file sharing somewhere, and then you lose a ton of overhead on that. With something like a custom posed mech, or like even if you make a custom variant yourself,
Somebody isn't going to put that
Somebody
out.
isn't
as
gonna
easily
put that out
because people are
they made it.
people
because
are
it's
fucking
not
petty, right?
Because it's not theirs, it's mine.
it's
so
mine.
why would I share that with
just,
someone?
You just for free gave Catalyst or any
Yeah.
other model business who's listening of one of 4 viewers now.
Hey, we're doing great.
Now we're
Okay,
done.
okay. Hey,
But
now-
anyway, you just gave them for free what they can now present at their next quarterly.
Now would be an amazing time to plug our Patreon.
Now,
We have a mystery donor
Not-
of like
not-
$1,000.
not-
this
not
is
yet.
American capitalism. They'll be
Not-
like,
not
"Fuck
yet.
your Patreon."
we
Thank you for the free idea.
we as of today we are up to 25 subscribers.
All right.
And most of the people that watch, according to the analytics, most of the views that we get are full-time views.
Nice. All right.
So
I could have swore Will said he had 13 subscriptions on his.
And now, a couple of those accounts were flagged as duplicates. So now I only have 11
well, look,
that are under.
Okay.
we've only been live for like a month, all right, at this point.
Yeah.
So
That's still
I
pretty good,
mean, I'm okay with it.
Thank you, everybody. Honestly.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Just
Thanks,
as
both of you.
as a note, the modularity stuff I actually did put as my comment because I filled
Yeah.
out the survey, and I welcome anybody
It's
to go
rad
to
idea.
GW's website because they're a big company. I guarantee you, if they started doing something like this, others will follow. Make your comments known because GW finally actually opened up their fucking mail boxes to listen to people's comments, and if you don't say anything, nothing's gonna change. So
And you know what it does? It also gives them something else that they can actually include in their subscription service that actually makes sense, other than like the
Well,
bare
I'm
bones
just-
stuff that they
I'm
have
just
now.
waiting for.
don't be the next Napster, okay?
I'm just waiting for Warhammer Plus to go like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore.
They probably will. I mean, they're actually getting ready to release a fantasy old world redub so that all my models that were for fantasy are actually usable again. Not that I'm gonna probably ever play fantasy again because they burned my ass so bad, but still.
Yeah.
I mean, Taco Bell burns my ass, but I keep going back. So spicy.
And I think on that, we're going to dump our ammo bins and probably go play a game.
You gonna dump something.
We'll see you guys next time.